Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our child trafficking event, prevention event. We're very honored to have you all here, and it's a great turnout. My name's Julie Crow. I'm the Executive Director of El Paso County Department of Human Services, and we have a great panel and some great speakers lined up for you tonight. So before I get started, I do want to make a few remarks. And first of all, I wanted to tell you that April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And you should have received a pin. Thank you, Commissioner Littleton, for passing our pins out. And she's here. I'm going to be recognizing all of our elected officials in a minute. But these pins have a bear, and they show El Paso County, and they have the blue pinwheel. The pinwheel is a national symbol of preventing child abuse and neglect. And it symbolizes a happy and whimsical childhood, one that we want all of our children to have. And so wear this pin proudly and remember that this is a month where we're preventing child abuse and neglect. And because of that, that's why we're holding this event tonight. And I want to thank some people. I'm sure to miss someone, so if I do, please accept my apologies in advance. But we worked with some great people to help us pull all of this event together tonight. The Outreach Committee and Human Trafficking Work Group of Chapel of Our Savior. Chapel of Our Savior also provided the refreshments, and Reverend Christa Diaz is here, and she played a big role. I'm not sure where she is, but there she is. So, and then she brought with her some youth who are going to be speaking this evening at the Candlelight Vigil. Millie, Ella, Ryan, Claire, and Carolyn Vanderwerff. And if you didn't get the connection, we have Commissioner Vanderwerff's daughter here tonight speaking, and that's really special for us too. We also want to thank Starbucks, who provided the coffee. This Starbucks is 1760 East Cheyenne Mountain Boulevard, and the manager is Leon Mendoza. So thank you to Starbucks for providing the coffee. And you see that business and faith-based and community partnership going on here. That's, we love that. We also want to thank Betsy Vanderwerff, Amy Ruff, Sandra Leaney, the Chief of Staff for the Exodus Road, Christina Iodice. Where's Christina? I don't see her. Christina, stand up. Christina is our Public Information Officer. There she is. Christina's been, in many ways, the nuts and bolts, helping to pull us all together on this event, and it certainly wouldn't have come together without Christina. All of our Department of Human Services staff, if you want to stand or wave your hand, there's a lot, and our staff investigate the incidents of child abuse and neglect, working closely with law enforcement. And they also, many of them, volunteered here at the event tonight. So thank you for our Department of Human Services staff. These are really hard issues, and I always tell people that caseworkers are first responders, and they don't always get recognized that way. But if there's an incident of child trafficking or child abuse and neglect, it's our caseworkers that go out and investigate and keep kids safe. So many, many thanks to our caseworkers for helping keep our littlest citizens in El Paso County safe. Our DHS management, we have a number of our managers here. Our executive team, raise your hand. We have a lot of folks here representing our management. And then I want to also recognize our commissioners. Commissioner Vanderwerff is here. Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Littleton are here. Our District Attorney, Dan May, who's also on our panel, is here, and he'll be speaking tonight. And I hope I haven't missed any elected officials. If I have, raise your hand, let me know. And I'd like to ask at this time for our commissioners to come up if you'd like to say a few words. We'd love to have you come up and just say a few words.
Thank you, Julie. So I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out. I wanted to thank all those everyone that put this together. It's outstanding effort, and I think you're going to learn a lot tonight. And then our DHS staff, I can't compliment them enough. They're wonderful, and everybody knows just how important to the county Julie is. You are an outstanding member of our community and the county, and we're so happy to have you. I think that was the smartest thing that Henry did, was hire you, Julie. And this is a sensitive topic, but it's a vitally important topic, and so I just want to make sure that that we leave here better educated and informed, and thank you again for coming out.
So Commissioner Peggy Littleton, I just want to thank Julie and Henry and our staff for putting this on, and for really having an opportunity to bring an awareness to the fact that something that we think doesn't exist in our little community. We tend to pull the wool over our eyes and think, oh, I mean, certainly in Colorado Springs, certainly in El Paso County, we don't have child abuse or human trafficking. But I think that the data and the statistics that you're going to be shown tonight begs to differ. And it's our job as citizens, it's our job as private, nonprofit, and government to work towards minimizing child abuse and minimizing or reducing or eliminating trafficking here in our area. So thank you for coming out to be part of the team tonight. Thank you for coming out to be better educated. Appreciate it.
And Stan Vanderwerff, Commissioner Stan Vanderwerff, I'd like to thank my two fellow commissioners. And since there's 3 of us here and we have a total of 5, we're not allowed to talk policy at all. We can only say thank you for coming to the meeting and so forth. But I would like to thank Chapel of Our Savior and also the DHS staff for being here, and everybody else in the community that has showed up. I think this is going to be a great event. And I'm going to be one of the folks that does closing comments at the end. But human trafficking is just absolutely awful. It's a destroyer of freedom. It's a destroyer of what we stand for in this country. It is the antithesis of our Constitution, and it's the antithesis of what's right. So I'm so glad that you're here because it means that you care very, very much, and I'm really looking forward to the program, and I'll talk to you at the end. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to give a quick overview of what you'll see tonight. So we are going to watch a film called Chosen. We have a very important speaker here, Kelly Dorr, and I'll be reading her bio in a little while and introducing Kelly. She's here in the front. And then we'll have an expert panel up at the front for discussion of the film, and then we'll have closing remarks in the candlelight vigil. So again, thank you all for joining us. I also thought I'd tell you a little bit about the Department of Human Services and why we're involved. The Department of Human Services is one of the agencies responsible to investigate child abuse and neglect, and is increasingly involved with child trafficking, especially since the passage of House Bill 16224, which amended the statutory definition of child abuse and neglect to include any cases in which a child is subject to human trafficking of a minor for sexual servitude. So DHS plays a really big role in these cases, especially since this bill passed in 2016. We work closely with law enforcement to assess alleged victims of child abuse and neglect involving human trafficking and offer services to the child and his or her family. And we also may file a petition in court on behalf of the child to help protect the child. I'm going to give you a few statistics about child trafficking, and I just want to make a disclaimer that many of these are underreported because trafficking happens, and obviously some of our victims and survivors don't come forward, and so these are still huge numbers, but just know that there's no perfect measure, and Kelly is doing a lot to help improve that across the country, and she'll maybe tell us a little bit about that. But this is a multi-billion-dollar industry annually. Human trafficking is the second largest and fastest growing criminal enterprise just behind drug trade, and it's also tied with illegal arms. Between 100,000 and 300,000 minors are trafficked in the United States each year. The average age a person is when they first become a victim of sex trafficking in the United States is 13. 1 in 3 runaways will be approached by a trafficker within the first 48 hours of running away. And 1 in 5 teens will receive unwanted sexual exploitation while online. We in El Paso County have established a sex trafficking task force in our community involving the Colorado Springs Police Department, the Department of Human Services, Probation, and the District Attorney's Office, Memorial Hospital, Homeland Security, and the FBI. It is called MASTF, or Metro Area Sex Trafficking Task Force. So again, I want to recognize all of our staff and executive team that work so closely to keep these citizens safe in El Paso County. At this time, I'd like to introduce Kelly Dorr, who's our speaker for tonight. Kelly has a degree in social work and a private counseling practice that focuses on human trafficking survivors and empowering them. She is a survivor of familial trafficking from ages 1 through 14 and testified against her trafficker when she was 15. Kelly went on to college and has built a life out of assisting others. She is also a former county commissioner who has worked extensively in the field of human trafficking and uses her life experiences to create awareness, educate communities, track legislation, and help create new laws to support victims of human trafficking. In 2014, Kelly Dorr was appointed to sit on the National Human Trafficking Board for elected officials and has also worked with both the Obama and Trump administrations and elected officials to help them understand the implications of human trafficking on a national level. She continues to play a key role for various state and national groups and the White House to fight to end modern-day slavery. Kelly recently formed the National Human Trafficking Survivor Coalition based in Parker, Colorado, with other professional survivors to help advocate, educate, and raise awareness for the degree of human sex trafficking and labor trafficking in Colorado and the nation. Raise awareness to the degree of human sex and labor trafficking in Colorado and the nation. This coalition wants to bring all the victim advocacy groups in the state together with the community to help empower survivors to become who they want to become, not what their past was, to assist organizations with survivor-informed care, and to advocate to businesses to help support them. Kelly also runs a nonprofit called Loving Her, which emphasizes and aims to support spouses and children of trafficked and domestic violence survivors. You can see Kelly has an amazing bio, and please give a big hand to our amazing guest, Kelly Dorr.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. Figure out how to use this correctly. It's an honor to be here, and I have to say it's an honor to work with fellow commissioners that I served with, and then also new ones, and working with Julie for several years through the state of Colorado. You guys have a fantastic advocate down here, and it is so incredible to be a part of a program that's within the state of Colorado as well. I've got to tell you, there's not a lot of counties that are doing this, that are putting out the awareness and actually even talking about the instance of human trafficking. Is there a so, real quick, Julie sort of went over some of the facts about human trafficking, and I think one of the important things to remember is that the FBI and also the State Department talks about that they estimate, and these are low conservative numbers when we estimate, because there are people out there who do not talk about what is going on with them. And I'll get to that in a minute, but we estimate on the low end about 300,000 children a year are trafficked in the United States of America. Human trafficking, as Julie said, it is ranked continually. It's either the second or third largest illegal type of trade under drug trafficking and illegal arms dealing. Most of the time they do go hand in hand. And then I think it's important to talk about, in the United States, I talk all over the nation, and it's interesting because all the time we hear, well, if we build a wall, if we shut our borders down, we're going to stop the instances of human trafficking. The fact of the matter is that 85% of children in the United States of America are American children. They are in your schools. They're in front of you every single day. And as we just saw Chosen, we talk about how children are groomed and they're picked up and what the average age starts at. But the one thing we don't talk about is the instance of familial trafficking in the United States. The average age that we sort of have some of the numbers on is 5 years old for familially trafficked children. These are children that are trafficked by people that were supposed to protect them, people who were supposed to care for them, and people that were supposed to love them. And these people taught them, and myself included, that we were merely more than a commodity and that we were made to serve the people that we are supposed to either bring money into. An important fact about familial trafficking is that it's not always money that the families make. It's either drug trade or other types of commodities. Just a conservative estimate, they estimate that there are 8,900 child victims that are purchased, and one child is purchased an average of 5.4 times a day. That's only one time a week that they're counting. So a lot of our estimates come to about a child is purchased by an adult in the United States 2.5 million times a year. Again, our conservative estimate, when you times that by 7, we're looking at close to 17.5 million times a year. Again, Julie did a great job with my background. I don't need to go into that. I don't like to stand up and talk about being a survivor all the time. I don't think it's important for a lot of the stories to come out and a lot of the graphic stuff to come out. But I think what's important is to recognize that we are professionals living amongst you. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I have 4 children, I have 3 teenagers right now. And trying to talk to them about the instances of trafficking, how you can get groomed, but also talking about the abuses that go on within our families. Like Julie said, at the age between 15 and 16, I testified to put my trafficker in prison. In 1993, they didn't have laws. He pled guilty to 19 of 27 counts of human trafficking. He served 2 months. And that was in addition to the 6 he had already served. He served 8 months in jail. Didn't have to register as a sex offender and was able to continue on his life. And so from that, I had to learn that not only did I have to trust the state, did I have to trust the county, did I have to trust the Department of Social Services, I had to go to court and then sit and watch the judge, who is now a Supreme Court judge in Colorado, rule more likely in favor of the 14 years of my life that I gave up. Some of the warning signs, I'm not going to go over them, but with commercial trafficking, it's very easy for us to recognize some of the signs because they're kids who aren't in school. They're kids who are runaways. Foster care is a huge area where a lot of these kids are being picked up. But what happens to the kids who are unseen, the kids that are in plain sight in front of us every single day? I was a straight A student in school. I played soccer. I ended up with a soccer scholarship. I lived 2 different lives. And a lot of it was because I knew if I told, I knew what it would do to my family, and I also thought that it was normal. It wasn't until I was 13 years old that I recognized that not every little girl was made to do what I was being made to do. And that's something that we need to talk about within our schools, and also recognizing these signs because they are there. A lot of the times in the United States of America, we don't want to recognize those signs. We don't want to get involved. And that's one of the biggest things that we can talk about as advocates across the United States. One of the biggest things that I do across the United States when I talk to groups is that when they make laws, when working with our legislators, if they're making laws that are about us and they're for us, but they're not bringing us to the table, then they're not going to be productive. And this is one of the biggest collaborations that we have to do. And so one of the things that I work on with my coalition is bringing law enforcement in, bringing those collaborations to the table because we are taught not to trust law enforcement. We're taught not to trust the police, and we're taught not to trust anybody that wants to come in and help us because they want to destroy us and they want to destroy our families. So recognizing that with victims, we have to bring people to the table, and we have to get survivors to trust that the system is going to work for them and that people are there and truly do want to help them. The greatest thing that I say to people is, look beneath the surface. If you suspect that there's something happening, if you suspect that there is a child that's being abused in your community, because most familial trafficking starts with horrendous child abuse as well. If you suspect that this is happening, please make that phone call. Make that phone call and let the authorities come in and at least get that child on the radar. Because not having that child on the radar is one potential child that is probably missed. So lastly, and I know that they will pass this out, but again, these are some numbers to call. The state of Colorado has a hotline that we can call. The United States has a hotline that we can call. But again, as Brianna said, and also as Lacey said, I am an ambassador with Shared Hope International, and so it's an honor to sort of go around and show the videos that they have, but also to talk about that it's not every form. You're not going to see these girls in the strip clubs all the time. Another important thing to remember, there are young boys in here. 50% of trafficking victims in the United States are boys. And that's something that we don't think about. And we really need to start talking about that and focusing on that. And so when we bring together when we bring legislators together, when we talk about funding, when we talk about counties and Department of Social Services and what we want to do, we need to make sure that we have everybody on those radars. And the state of Colorado right now, we have 3 homes for minors, girls, who are sex trafficked victims. That's about 20 beds in the state of Colorado. At any given point, we are about 150 beds short. We have nothing for boys. And across the nation, there's actually only a couple homes open for boys. So those are some things that we need to talk about in moving forward, but also just that awareness piece of preparing what child abuse looks like and how it can move into trafficking and how that happens. So thank you again tonight. I'll let, we're obviously going to move on to the panel. And I just want to say this is such an important event, and I'm so appreciative to see the people that are here tonight and the things that you guys are doing here in El Paso County, because I have to tell you, you are way ahead of what the rest of the state is doing.
Thank you. You're amazing. So I just have to say, let's give a big round of applause to Kelly Dora. I am so proud to call her a friend. So at this time, we're going to bring our panel up. And before I do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about our moderator for the panel. Let's see, I lost my place here. Okay. So, Amy Roth Sandrolini is our moderator for the panel tonight. And I should have said more, but Amy and Betsy Vanderwerff really pulled together all the food and the refreshments and really helped create the idea for the event tonight. And so thank you to them. And Amy is an award-winning journalist turned human rights advocate. She has worked in the U.S. Embassy to the Vatican in Rome, Italy, leveraging U.S. Department of State programs and resources to provide training for Catholic nuns to identify and support human trafficking victims. To date, that network of nuns has helped more than 14,000 women and girls. And I think some of them are here tonight. So raise your hands. Yes. So thank you for our nuns that are here tonight. Amy has also worked with International Justice Mission, an agency that combats human trafficking and works to fix broken public justice systems in 17 countries around the world. Amy relocated to Colorado Springs in August of last year and has been actively engaged in the Human Trafficking Working Group with the Chapel of Our Savior and the Human Trafficking Task Force of Southern Colorado. She is currently serving as the Chief of Staff with the Exodus Road, a Colorado Springs-based agency working in Thailand, India, Colombia, and the United States, collaborating with law enforcement to ensure victims from human trafficking and to rescue victims from human trafficking and arrest traffickers and perpetrators. So Many thanks to Amy for your huge role in this event, and I will turn it over to Amy to introduce our panelists and moderate the next part of our program.
Thank you so much, Julie. And can I ask our panelists to please come and take your seats, if you would be so kind. And while they're doing so, I am going to repeat what you have already heard, which is thank you for being here tonight. Every single one of you who is here this evening. I want to say that I appreciate your willingness to walk into this room tonight. I appreciate your courage to walk into this room tonight and learn about human trafficking. It is a very heavy and very dark subject. But as I think you have already understood or will come to understand by the end of this evening, it is crucial to understand about it. Number one, knowledge might save you or save someone you love. And number two, as a journalist, on my heart is the fact that knowledge or awareness is a first step towards change. And as Kelly rightly said, so much is being done in El Paso County. There's a lot that's being done around the world. But the change that I want to be a part of is to do and say more to combat human trafficking. And I want to be that change in the world, starting right here in Colorado Springs. And I am so encouraged that I am not alone in that work. And in front of you right now, you have some experts who are on the front line of this life and death battle. And so what we're going to do tonight is we are going to, I'm going to briefly introduce each of our panelists, and then they will make a brief opening statement. And then we're going to open the floor to you. So while we get started, if you can maybe think of some things you might want to ask our experts, we hope we'll have enough time to get to some of your questions. And I have a final but very important final note. And our panelist to my left works with the FBI. And by the sensitive nature of her work for her safety and security, I have to ask that you do not photo or take video this evening while she is here with us. So with that note, let us begin. And we are going to begin with District Attorney Dan May. I thank you for being here, sir. 4th Judicial District Attorney Dan May was elected DA for both Teller and El Paso counties. He is currently serving his 4th term. In 2009, the first Veterans Court in the state of Colorado began under his leadership. Other special courts are the Juvenile Division Unit, the Drug Court, and the Mediation Unit. Dan does take a tough stand on those who commit crimes against children and the elderly, those who commit violent crimes, and those who are habitual criminals. Dan is a product of District 11 schools, graduating from William Mitchell High School. He received a business degree in economics at Arizona State University and his JD degree in law from Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. So with that, I thank you, sir, and would you like to give us, share some thoughts with us? Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I will swap you. Would you like?
You can tell the person in the suit's probably going to end up on the panel tonight. You guys look a lot more relaxed than I do. I've been a prosecutor since 1982, started in our county courts and worked up through the office. The first time I really met a hero in my job was the first rape case or sexual assault case I handled, and realized how difficult it is to come forward, to meet with the police, to talk about an intimate, one of the most embarrassing, disgusting moments that's ever happened in your life, and willing to talk to the police about it, but then having to talk to the prosecutor about it, and then have to talk to it in front of the judge at a preliminary hearing, and then get in a courtroom full of people with strangers you don't know from our community who are going to decide whether someone is guilty or not, and have a room full of people that you have to describe those same things. So to come forward, I really met my first hero when I handled that case. Kelly, you are a hero to me. And you coming forward makes a difference not only in your life, but the life of others. If you don't do it, we don't stop what's happening. It is a pretty daunting task when you hear about millions of people worldwide, hundreds of thousands across the country, many in Colorado and in our own locale. Martin Luther King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And that's true. This is a worldwide concern, but it's also a local concern. And how do we handle when we have that overwhelming task? You have people like Amy who've been working on the worldwide national stage where she's fighting in Colombia, fighting in Thailand, fighting in other countries. But I come back to sort of that analogy of the starfish. How many of you know the starfish analogy? The person who comes up in the beach in the ocean the night before swept starfish up in the beach. And clearly out of the water, they're going to die. And there are thousands of them on the beach. And the person comes up and starts throwing them back into the ocean. Another man comes along and says, "Why are you doing that? How can you, what's the purpose of this? There are thousands and thousands on this beach. There is no way you can solve this problem." And the person says, "Well, maybe not, but it makes a difference to this starfish." And they throw it back into the ocean. Now, I actually think our analogy is broader than that, because when Dan May can step down and pick up a starfish, and Amy can pick a starfish at another part of the beach, and Kelly can pick up a starfish on another part of the beach, we start to make a real difference, not just to that starfish, but to the entire beach and to the entire world. In our little community, yes, we have a very aggressive team, a very aggressive law enforcement who have been very active in human trafficking for some time. Just a few years ago, sort of in our starfish world, I had some attorneys come just a few years ago and say, could we start a diversion program? Because we actually have more diversion programs in our office than any DA's office in the state of Colorado. We're very proud of that, but we didn't have a human trafficking prostitution diversion program. Most of our prostitution cases and the people who were victims of human trafficking were in our city courts. And they were getting probation and some sort of penalties along with that, maybe some therapy, and they were in a revolving door. So they came to me. It was Shannon Gerhardt was one of those, Stephanie Redfield, Jennifer Darby, Jennifer Veman, to name a few. They wanted to put together a whole program and go to city and say, would you turn all of those cases over to us to handle under state charges rather than your city ordinances? They said, sure. For them, it was getting it off the docket to a certain extent. They went to across our city and got a number of people to come on board because it's not just a criminal issue. Our first class had 6 people in it. We had a doctor who was willing to examine and treat the victims of human trafficking, and quite frankly, some of them had never seen a doctor for some of the female issues that they were facing. We had a dentist who came on board who does free dental work, and we quite frankly had some people that had never seen a dentist in their life. We actually have a tattoo artist that will remove the tattoos for free that they use to mark their property, their commodity, to keep them within the realm of human trafficking. We had people in housing, partners in housing come in. What about housing? Many had kids. What about kids? What about jobs? We actually got people to donate suits. We put together resumes. We actually sit down with each individual, and it's a multi-stage process at many sessions, and you're finding out what are your individual needs that we can help address getting you out of this. It is, even people who are experts in the field, we go in with certain assumptions. We had a lot of suits for women. Our first class had a man in it, and we didn't have a suit for him. So we had to go get a suit for him. Luckily, one of my employees' sons was the same size as he was in terms of getting a suit right away. We've now had 28. Yesterday, we graduated a class of 3 more people who've gone through that program. To date, only 2 of them have committed another crime. And those 2 are petty offenses, not prostitution. And I got to tell you, this is an area that gets recidivism very quickly. We have not seen that. Now, it's a young program. It's only a few years old, but we have none that have been re-picked up for prostitution. And it is our community coming together and our starfishes, if you will, that we're hoping to make a difference with. And that's what we're doing in our office. Hope I didn't go too long.
It was absolutely worth it. Thank you for that very encouraging sharing with us. I want to now introduce our panelist, Alicia Wagner. Alicia has been a victim specialist with the FBI for almost 12 years, serving in the Minneapolis, Boston, and currently the Denver division. She has been stationed in Colorado Springs for just over 6 years, and luckily for us, has no desire to leave anytime soon, right? So again, just encourage no photos or video, and Alicia, please.
Sorry about that. That might seem a little weird, but I want you to be able to use photos from here, and I just prefer that my face is not in the media. So just a little bit about the FBI and what we do with human trafficking. So Denver is our field office, and we have an office here in Colorado Springs. But in our Denver field office, we have the Innocence Lost Task Force, which is made up of FBI agents and task force officers, which is what we call them, like detectives from other law enforcement agencies that come together and work solely human trafficking with children as victims. So we have, I think there's like 9 or 10 of them that work that full time in the Denver metro area, which is pretty cool. I don't have the exact stat in front of me, but last year I think they recovered something like 174 kids just in the Denver metro area. So we are working this, and we work it full time. As a victim specialist, my job is once we pick up the kids, we recover the kids. And I say kids because that's what we mainly work. My job is to work with that child or survivor to get them the resources and services that they need to be able to move forward and heal. The other thing I want to tell you about is some kind of cool things that are happening in the community. Very recently, well, a couple years, DHS kind of formed a human trafficking coalition where we all came together and said, how do we best help survivors? And from that, very recently, we have started a multidisciplinary team here in El Paso County, which includes victim advocates, law enforcement, Stephanie Redfield from the DA's office, probation, DHS, so that when we do have a case, when we do recover these kids, we're all a team. We all come together right away, and we are able to best provide services and make the best case. Because sometimes those things are not the same thing, right? And so we have just started that, and it's very exciting for us here in El Paso County. And I actually just earlier this week was up in Teller County, and they are doing the same thing. So a lot of good work being done in this field, and I'm very proud to be part of it.
Thank you. Another encouraging testimony to what is actually being done here and making significant differences in the lives of trafficking victims. So thank you to you, and I thank you as well again. And now, a representative from DHS. We have Sunshine Powell, who is the supervisor of the Adolescent Assessment Team with the El Paso County Department of Human Services. And with all due respect, I think the best name on our panel this evening, huh? In this business, you need some sunshine. Yeah. Sunshine has a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling and previously worked with at-risk teens and their families for 15 years as a supervisor in a residential treatment facility. There, she provided healthy sexuality and anger management curriculum to adult and juvenile sex offenders. Sunshine is a member of the Metro Area Sex Trafficking Task Force, and her passion is working with the community and partners to drive resource access for children and families to be safe and healthy together. Let me pass you my microphone.
I don't like public speaking at all. I'll just own that right now. I am nervous. I will never forget, a number of years ago, my first kiddo that I worked with that was being rescued from trafficking. And she said to me, I am not a bad kid. And I don't think I appreciated at that moment how woefully unprepared we were as a community to really take this on and provide what these kids and these families need. At DHS, part of what I do is I work with our partners and our resources to try and figure out if home is safe. Sometimes home is not an option for these kids because their families can't keep them safe. These kids often go back to where they came from with their traffickers because they've got those trauma bonds. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of partnering to get them to realize that they deserve better and that they are better. I'm really encouraged by all of the wonderful partnerships that have been forming and the forward motion that we've been making as a community. But I think that we have a lot more work to do, and we need all of the people in this room and all the people in the community to really work with us to wrap our arms around these kids and rescue them and help them realize that they deserve better and that they can be better. The last thing that I want to say is we're working on t-shirts for our task force, and I found this really cool thing online, and it says, child not commodity, person not possession. And we need to remember that. These are individuals, these are families, these are your sisters, your brothers. It can hit anywhere, and we just need to work together as a community to build resources better for them. What? Oh. Our task force is called Mastiff, and it's got a big protective Mastiff on it, on our shirt. That was Craig Simpson from CSPD's idea, and it's a wonderful representation of what we should be doing for our families.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you, Sunshine. Our next panelist is Carolyn Vanderwerff, who I have been fortunate to know from Chapel of Our Savior. And I can say that in many ways she has been the driving force behind our youth group becoming youth advocates on the issue. So we will hear from her, and we will hear from some of her friends later at the candlelight vigil. But Carolyn is a high school senior in El Paso County and has been involved with trafficking prevention and healing organizations for over a year. In September, Carolyn traveled to Nashville to learn about Thistle Farms, a justice enterprise devoted to the healing and rehabilitation of trafficking, prostitution, and addiction survivors. She is here tonight representing her peers and the fears they have surrounding human trafficking in their age group, as well as the lack of awareness within schools and youth communities. And I am so grateful to have your voice on our panel here this evening.
I have a script. I'm not nearly as articulate. I really wanted to thank Amy for inviting me to be on this panel and giving me this opportunity. And of course, a huge thanks to Julie Crow and DHS for making this all happen, and everyone that came tonight. And there's a lot of badass women here tonight, which is so cool. I love it. And that includes Christa Diaz, Mama Kay, who's been such a big support for Chapel of Our Savior and our youth group. We've had so many great discussions and projects about this. Our involvement with this just started just over a year ago. In February, we were at Josh and John's getting some ice cream, and we started discussing the implications of dress code in schools, which kind of turned into this discussion about how we perceive one another at face value and who we really are, and this kind of transitioned into this discussion about human trafficking. And in this last year, it's been so powerful to see the passion in this community and across the nation, to witness the unconditional love and the desire to heal and protect these survivors is a really great reminder that there are truly some awesome people in our lives and in this world. And this year has also been powerful because it's been a reality check. I'm definitely not the first, and I'm not the last person to tell you that human trafficking, this form of modern slavery, is happening in our community, and it's happening now. Colorado ranks 20th in the nation for reported child abuse and 7th for reported rapes. With the Denver International Airport and I-25 running right through the state, Colorado makes a great hub for traffickers. And it's not just in this vein in the middle of the state, but that includes El Paso County and Denver. It's happening all over. These terrible things are happening to people like me, to your children, and to your grandchildren. I'm here tonight on behalf of my youth group, on behalf of my friends and my peers. It makes me sick that my biggest concern, are if my college roommate and I are gonna get along together, while other people my age worry about where they'll sleep tonight. Even worse, there are individuals that don't have any choice or influence in their lives, and they might be held in a trafficking network through drugs, alcohol, or blackmail. These youth should be having the time of their lives, getting their driver's licenses, making memories with their friends, and experiencing the awkward growing pains that come with transitioning from a child to an adult. The majority of victims are coerced into this network when they are around my age or younger. Schools play a large role in the majority of our lives, and I'm frustrated that my school does not provide sufficient education on trafficking awareness. I remember being told to exercise at least an hour a day, or being told that frozen pizzas are not the healthiest of meals. But when I was 13 and 14, I recall no one telling me about trafficking and the tactics to bring these young people into the networks. I feel my school has failed my friends and myself in this regard. There's a lack of education about awareness for vulnerable individuals and resources that students can approach should they feel threatened or need to reach out on a friend's behalf. As uncomfortable as it is, we need to be having these conversations with our young people and encouraging them to understand that no one has to endure this time of our lives alone. We need to encourage our youth to look out for one another. It's unacceptable that my involvement and knowledge about trafficking has to come about from a discussion at Josh and John's, which is really by chance, although I like to call it a God moment. I love ice cream as much as the next person, but at that time, as a 17-year-old, I didn't know what trafficking really was or what it looked like. I didn't know that it was a form of slavery, something that my history books told me we had abandoned a long time ago. I'm here tonight because my mom shouldn't be telling me to arm myself with pepper spray and a knife when I go out on a Friday night. I'm here for my friends, that when I asked them if they'd like to attend this evening about trafficking, they averted their eyes and said they were busy with homework. And we have 38 days left in school. As seniors, we're not doing any homework anymore. We're done, come on. I'm here for my teachers, that when I told them about this event, they became excited, and they wanted to learn more about how they can help as educators, and how they can bring this education into our school and into our community. I'm here because I don't want to be next, and I don't want there to be a next. Human trafficking ends when there are no more victims left to prey upon. And the more we educate ourselves and others, the closer we bring ourselves to that day. This education starts with our schools and our communities with events like this and people like that, and people like those that are in this room. I'm optimistic for our future and for our youth. Thank you.
Carolyn, I thank you, and we hear you. We hear you. And the youth across this country are waking us, I'll call myself older folks, up. And I want to say thank you for showing us how we can help you protect yourself. That's the least we can do. So thank you for being here this evening. Your voice is so important. Thank you to the rest of you. And our last but not least panelist, I am happy to say, is also a friend. So, Kelly, I would leave it to you to add whatever thoughts you would like to share with us that you didn't get a chance to, or underline anything that our panelists have said that you think needs to be reiterated.
Thank you. And Carolyn, if you want to set something up at your school, we will get there and we will talk to them. One of the things that you bring up, a couple months ago, I was in Douglas County at Highlands Ranch High School. I had a class of 100 kids, all juniors, and we were talking about social media and how, because that is the biggest area that you can be trafficked in, especially when you're in school. And so I said to them, I said, okay, your parents aren't here, it's safe, I'm not gonna tell anybody. How many of you have social media accounts that your parents don't know about? And 100 of them, of the 100, raised their hands. And I said, okay, we're going to use this as a teaching moment. And so I said to them, how many on there that you have of your social media accounts do you know every single person who contacts you? Not one single hand raised in that room. And I think all of those high school kids, it was one of those aha moments, like, oh my gosh, we really need to talk about how this happens and how the recruitment can happen. And one of the other things that we don't talk about is sort of the secondhand trauma that comes from working in this field. And what is it like for the people who are on the front lines all the time? And I don't think you guys hear that enough. And I just want to say, as a survivor, thank you for what you do, because I know how traumatizing it is to go through the system myself, but also, and as a cognizant adult, to recognize the trauma that comes out from having to listen to victims every single day and then getting up and doing it every single day again with a ray of hope, knowing that at one point we are going to be able to at least make waves in this. And it is true what we said. There are more people enslaved in the world today than at any given point in time in history. So we estimate roughly 27 million people in the world. It's probably closer to 40 million people in the world who are either commercially exploited, sexually exploited, labor trafficked. There are organ trafficked. There are so many different varying forms. I think the United States government labels 34 of them on different varying types of trafficking. There's probably more. And so one of the last things that I want to end with, if we want to talk about ending human trafficking, especially when we're talking about children, it's very important to remember, there is no such thing as a child prostitute. Anybody who's under the age of 18 is not legally, cannot be held responsible for being a prostitute, cannot be convicted for being a prostitute. And I think that's a huge thing that the federal government has said, but also that states are really trying to do that. And I have to say, there are counties and there are places in the nation that still are prosecuting children. El Paso County, you guys aren't doing that. And I know I work with Stephanie Redfeld, she's fantastic. It's so important that you guys aren't doing that, and that is going to work farther into collaboration with victims. But the greatest thing that we need to talk about, the average John in the United States of America is a married father of two, 40 years old, making $85,000 a year or more. They are your professionals. They are in the community. And so a lot of times victims don't come forward because I'll tell you, I was sold to pastors. I was sold to police officers. I was sold to attorneys. People that, again, should know right from wrong, but they don't. And again, we have to recognize not every human being is a bad human being, and human beings are fallible, and they will make bad choices. But we need to start recognizing that if we don't tackle the demand situation in our country, the demand on children is not going to stop. I'm not talking about buying adult prostitutes. I'm not talking about women that, when we saw the whole issue between Backpage.com and sex workers that were saying, well, now we are being persecuted. I'm talking about selling children who cannot legally be sold in this country. And that's something that if we want to end child sex, commercial sex exploitation in this country, we have to talk about the demand, and we have to end it with every single adult in this room. And that means men in here, I'm going to ask you to stand up. You need to pressure your own peers, because I'll tell you, I speak to groups around the country, and a lot of men will say, well, I showed up at a hotel. I didn't know she was underage, and we exchanged money. She willingly came. It was a business deal. The majority of those girls are trafficked, number one, and they are underage. So just those are some things that we need to talk about openly. We need to think about when you think that something is legal. And again, if it morally is not something that feels right or is okay and you have to hide it, then it's probably not something that you should be doing. And I think that's the greatest thing we need to talk about. And when we're dealing with trafficking, we can put the deterrent programs, we can keep combating this day after day, but if we don't fight to end the demand and to educate the buyers who are taking advantage of minors, then we're never going to make any headwaves at all.
Thank you, Kelly. It's a powerful point to end our statements with, given that it is estimates put it at $150 billion industry that is driven by supply and demand. We have individuals here working all along the supply chain, and we have to be working on the demand side of the chain as well. And it is, I think, we see, it takes a village. And thank goodness we have some extraordinary, gutsy, smart, and committed people on our front line. And I would just like, if I could, to have one more round of applause for our experts. And my heroes in so many ways. So heartfelt thanks to all of you. And Julie, in the interest of time, I think perhaps we might have time for one question, or I could throw it. Do we have a question from the audience? We have one here. I think if Julie will indulge us, we have time for one more question. Yeah, would you like to use a microphone, or if you say, I could repeat it. With all due respect, I think we all need to get like that at some point. If we understand really what this issue is about, this is the only logical response in many ways. Thank you. to you. Well, thank you for sharing it. It's courageous to share, and as we can hear clearly, there are disturbing stories, right? It is among us. We don't know exactly what is happening there, but nonetheless, we have to be aware of the fact that this is happening closer than we would like to think it is. And I think, Alicia, would you like to respond to her? Thank you.
So just a couple things. Because she's a minor, is law enforcement involved at all? Have you talked to law enforcement? Okay. Sorry. So that are they here in town? You're okay. So you can come down to our office because it's not just human trafficking. Human trafficking at this point might be impossible to know if that's happening. But what I can tell you, if there are adult men soliciting child pornography, that's a federal crime. Okay? So there's other things that we can look at. So if you, or preferably the parent of the child, would be willing to come down to the FBI office. Yep. And because guardians have control over the phone, we can do stuff with that. But at least we can figure out it might not be a federal case. We might refer it to a local agency or our task force here in town. But there is other things that we can look at. And then we can also have a conversation about resources that are available. DHS, do you have?
If I can just connect with you after, I'll get some more information and see what there is to try and support your family.
Thank you again for sharing. And we will leave that as the last word. But again, it is, the risks are real. The risks are here. They're all around us. But the good news is the resources are all around us as well. So if tonight, if you've heard anything, hear that the risks are real, but there are resources. Educate yourself. If you don't know what you're looking for and you don't know what to do when you see it, we're not going to put an end to it. But together, aware and working together, we've got a fighting chance. So again, thank you to all of our panelists. And with that, Julie, I will hand it over to you again.
Thank you, Amy, and to all of our panelists. And I think some of our panelists may stick around a little bit. And so if you had a question that you wanted to ask, we'll have some of our experts here so you can still ask your question. Again, I just want to thank all of you for being here and taking your time and being a part of our event and being dedicated to this issue. All of you, our panelists, and everyone in this room is really a hero for caring about this issue and for your involvement and dedication. So sincerely, thank you for being part of this. I also want to turn this over to Commissioner Vanderwerff, who's going to make a few remarks and then help us to go out into the front of the building for our candlelight vigil. Thank you again, though. You guys are an amazing group.
Thank you very much, Julie. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I tell you, it was eye-opening for me, and I imagine that it was for you as well. And I just wanted to kind of share some of my observations, and then we'll head on out for the candlelight ceremony. So, first of all, one very important thing is we all need to know what trafficking looks like. Otherwise, we can't combat it. I thought that was very interesting. And I would say if you are a target of trafficking, the recruiter, the person that's recruiting you, is going to try to trap you. And once you feel trapped, you're not going to know how to get out. So be very, very wary of that and be careful. And also look out for your friends, because they might be in that situation and you need to be looking for the warning signs, because the best person that can help you get out of a situation is maybe because your friend sees it and you don't. Much older boyfriends, I thought that was interesting. And tattoos as a marker, I had no idea. So that was pretty amazing to me as well. So there's something, there's a warning sign. So one of my main observations is how subtle this is for getting trapped into this situation. Wow. I mean, from that movie, it starts off with friendships and turns into something else. So that was actually pretty scary, because I had no idea it could be so subtly and done in such a sophisticated way. And I think several panelists and other people mentioned this. Human trafficking is modern-day slavery. That's what it is. That's why we need to fight it. Again, it destroys freedom. It destroys your God-given right as a person to be free, and we need to fight that anywhere we can. I'd like to thank Amy, our moderator, and I'd like to thank our panelists. Knowledge and awareness is the first step to stopping human trafficking. And keep in mind, 4th Judicial District, the diversion programs that you have. Thank you, Dan. Well, I heard about the sex trafficking task force. It's awesome that we have that and that it's in operation here in the Colorado Springs area. And if you see something, you can contact them and work with them. And by the way, Sunshine, you spoke great for a person who's not comfortable in public speaking. Good job. And I would like to thank Carolyn, my daughter, because our kids actually are the first line of defense. They need to be aware as well. So more education is very, very important. And it's not just about educating us adults, right? It's also about educating our kids. And I am so sorry to say it starts at teenage years, the front end of teenage years. That's disgusting, but that's where we've got to go. And to Kelly and all the other victims, thank you for speaking up. That's bravery, and we saw it. And your doing it is what helps the rest of us know what to look for. So thank you very much for doing that. And thank you very much for speaking up. Don't leave until you have spoken to the resources in this room, because it sounds like you're reaching out, and I'm very, very glad you did that. And I'll tell you what, if that isn't a testament to why we hold these meetings, we've got one right there. So appreciate your doing that. All right, so know how to see it, report it, volunteer. By the way, go speak to your school principal and get something going in your school. So, in fact, my daughter mentioned that, and I had no idea that there really is nothing going on in our high school about it. And that's, again, the first line of defense. So thank you very much. At this time, I'd again like to say thank you to everybody. We're going to have a candlelight vigil. It's going to be out front, so you'll go out the main entrance here and out the front door. And I guess we're going to have actual candles, so that's really great. But everybody, please be careful with those candles. We have a really, really dry fire season going on. So please be careful with the candles. And thank you again, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.